Uchumi for organizing this. Going back to our respective spaces, I come from a background of health. Can we talk about the realities that this debt is causing in our workplaces, its impact in our families? And it has an impact, a very big impact. We had Blandina just post a picture about its impact on women. And the impact is probably bigger. So we need data accountability. We need to ask these questions. My fellow panelists, going back to even those in the informal sector, when you go back, we just saw what the impact is in the informal sector. Going back to our spaces, let's talk to each other. Let's inform each other about it. And of course, let's organize and see that we're able to get solutions to this. The question of minimum wage for me would be lower on the list. The first thing for us to do would be probably work on the debt issue. If we're able to work on the debt issue, it means we shall have more money. Our debt to GDP ratio shall go down. We shall have more money. We shall have more fiscal space, which means even services such as healthcare, the background from which I come from, shall be more accessible to the public. Because currently, the government is trying, because they're unable to meet the cost of healthcare, they are slowly trying to push the public into accessing healthcare from the private facilities. Of course, this is sinking us further into into poverty, because, as we know, when you're asked to pay for healthcare at the point of consuming it, which is basically what you call out-of-pocket health expenditure, most Kenyans are unable to meet those costs. So if we let that go on and on, it means we shall all pay by our lives. So organize, talk about these issues, and let's keep ourselves informed. Viva, thank you.
Okay. I propose this, that if the government has our interests at heart, the government should stop borrowing and put up the government should bring us on board as citizens, give us the debt report and tell us this is what we owe. They should come clean and tell us we owe this much. So in this much that we owe, this is what we collect. And we as citizens, we can come up with measures and decide, because we owe this much, we want to pay these debts. We are not going to pay this 70% that the government is paying. We can manage to pay 5% or 10% so that we can grow our own economy and empower our own citizens. A citizen that's empowered is a citizen that has good health. If our health sector is stable, everyone will work and we'll pay our debts, we'll pay our taxes, and our taxes will pay our debts. If the education sector is stabilized, we are going to have knowledgeable citizens who are going to come up with new ideas on how we can manage our debt as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just respond to the questions in really no order. Millie asked why she wants to understand why the budget cuts are on critical sectors. And my thinking is because this is where you can make most of the savings. You know, when you're talking about education, health, and water, it's the majority of Kenyans that need this. And if you want to, you know, make savings to pay debt, these are the sectors that they will target. Otherwise, the others are not very significant. But the biggest challenge, I think, for us as a country is that we have never really taken, or rather considered, the importance of gender responsive budgeting. What on a budget to? We just, you know, throw around figures. We really don't have a gender lens in how we budget. Hatujiulizi, if I put money or if I make budget cuts, say on the health sector, ni nani ataumia sana? Because that's how deep it's supposed to go when they're doing the analysis. Fine, we make budget cuts on the health sector, but who is the end user? Nani ataumia sana? And then at that point you decide and say, okay, so there's so many women in this country who are unemployed, who cannot even access health services, they have all these health issues, maybe this is not the sector to cut. Unfortunately, we don't reason like that, or rather the government doesn't think like that. The other reason I think is also because there's lack of representation of women in key decision-making spaces, and not just women, even the other marginalized groups like, youth and people living with disabilities. If your voice is not on the table when they're making discussing this and making these decisions, it's very hard for them to actually think it's actually, the youth who are going to be affected if we make cuts in the education sector, because the youth are not there to voice their issues. And I think that is why it's really important that we have to infiltrate those spaces. Lazima tutafute venye tutaketi, lazima tutafute venye, our voices are going to be heard, whether you're a youth, you're an elderly person, you're, a woman. We have to influence these processes. Ile time ya kukaa na kusema, what, I'm not employed, I'm not paying taxes, I don't care, imeisha. Because whether you are employed or not, kimeturamba tu sisi wote, So we really have to do something. And then there's also the public's participation aspect, and we were told that's the process that leads to the development of the finance bill. Unfortunately, it's also how this process is handled. That notice goes out, I think, inaekwa kwa gazeti. How many people read newspapers nowadays? Very few people, and then it comes out 2 days before the public participation. Now imagine someone living in, I don't know, Marsabit, say North Horr, who needs to come to Marsabit town for that public participation. First of all, you are unemployed. Unatoa pesa wapi ya kusafiri kwenda, Marsabit town for this public participation. If you are a woman, you have children, you have people you're taking care of, what time do you have to travel to go? It needs to be taken to the lowest level, the ward level where everyone can participate. And then there's also the aspect of, how these engagements are undertaken. Are they really meaningful? It's like a tick in the box, 100 people came, but were they even given a chance to speak? Do they know what the process is about? Because most of the times it's just a tick in the box, public participation, it may happen in Nairobi, and they move on to implement their own things. And we did a study, I think back in 2018, to understand how they come up with these priorities. And so the interesting thing is that, first of all, it's men who go for this public participation. Obviously, men have the resources, wako na pesa ya kusafiri and everything. And the priorities that are presented in these spaces ni infrastructure, buildings, barabara, nothing about the soft issues like health. Do we know why? Hapo ndio kuna kuanga na tender. This is where people make their money. So when you talk about equipping a health facility, how do you make money out of that? It means employing doctors. It means employing nurses. How do you make money out of employing people? There's no money there. So they keep on. That is why if you go to all the counties, you will see like most of the development that has happened in infrastructure. Kama si barabara, ni mahoteli, ni shule that don't have teachers, hospitals that don't have doctors, because that is where the money is. So we have to also influence this public participation process. And, the youth are the majority. The youth are, technologically savvy. Why can't we influence that we even have, public participation happening in digital spaces? That utakuwa somewhere in town in Nairobi, but you're still participating in, development processes in your village. You don't really have to be there physically. Otherwise, we continue being left out. There was a question on how do we find a balance between austerity measures and delivery of services. So I think at the beginning it was mentioned, we really don't have a problem of revenue. Our problem is on the expenditure and how we manage these resources. So first thing is to close the tax loopholes where we are losing this money. We collect a lot of revenue, but when you see how much of it is actually being invested towards delivery of services, ni kidogo sana, watu wanaiba. So hii pesa ya corruption yenye inapotea, if we manage to recover these monies, we actually probably would have addressed some of the gaps that we are experiencing right now, but we are losing a lot of resources through those, loopholes. And then there's domestic resource mobilization. I mean, Kenya is a rich country. We have a lot of resources. The mining sector right now contributes a little over 1% to the GDP of this country, but it has the potential of contributing up to 10%. So we have resources. We need to start looking internally on how to get these resources instead of borrowing externally. What resources do we have in the country? How can we get revenue from them? And then finding alternatives to raising revenue. And it is not taxing the poor and the vulnerable, because when you tax bread, the rich people probably don't eat bread. I think they eat eggs and, sausages and all those things. So when you, why tax bread? Why not tax sausages zenye watu wengine ni watu wachache wanakula? We have a campaign that is going on that is about taxing the rich. Now, the people who benefit from most of these tax exemptions are actually the rich. So can the government widen its tax base by taxing the rich and not the poor people? Because what they're doing right now is actually increasing the gap between the poor and the rich. The poor are becoming more poorer and the rich are becoming more richer because they're benefiting from some of these tax measures. There was a question on how, 2 minutes, what we are doing in terms of addressing unpaid care in domestic work. So our work has been around advocating and influencing for the government to recognize unpaid care in domestic work as valued work. And how we have done this, first of all, we supported the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics to do this time use survey. And the idea was, if they know where Kenyans are spending their time, that is where they will invest the resources. So kama umeona, there are so many women who are just revolving around the health sector, hapo ndio wako, invest resources there, you will free up their time. So now we have a draft national care policy that is still going through review. We have the time use survey, but at the grassroots level, what we've been doing is mobilizing and organizing women to participate in these, budget making processes, to present their priorities. And in the informal settlements like, Kawangware, and Kibra, we've heard those who have gone to say like they need a health facility and the government has put resources there. But that only happened because they were present during those processes. In most of the areas, the women are actually missing. So we need to figure out how to infiltrate those spaces and influence these budget making processes. And then at the national level is just public campaigns on how all of us perceive unpaid care in domestic work, because I know most of us think it is not valued work, and that is why we even underpay the domestic workers. Which brings me to the question she asked about the minimum wage. So I think it is defined in the Employment Act for most of the sectors. An example is the domestic workers sector. In Nairobi, we are supposed to pay them like, I think 15,300 shillings. But how many Kenyans actually pay in Nairobi domestic workers that much? Inakuanga, anaishi kwangu, anakula kwangu, why should I give them so much money? Why? Because we don't really value this kind of work. We think it's unskilled work, it's work that women should be doing, so we shouldn't be paying them as much. But these are people who have dependents, who have children that they have to take to school. So we don't have a lack of policies. The problem we have in Kenya is the implementation and the enforcement of those policies by the government. And that is where we also need to put pressure. Wanjiku had asked proposals on, what we are doing to the government in addressing like university students and the challenges they are facing. Again, it's the aspect of, pushing for gender responsive budgeting, because if you do participate in those spaces, your voices will be heard. It's ensuring that the government invests resources in sectors that create employment for the youth, but more importantly, the youth need to be in these spaces. You can't, and we have seen what you have been able to do in the last 2 months. People like us who are millennials are there to support in any way that we can, but we really need to take this actively. You need to be active citizens, not passive. Thank you.
Just to respond to the cost of our debt, I think the cost of our debt is poverty. And I know poverty is the worst form of violence that anyone can experience in this world. And poverty will make us to be slaves of politicians so that they can get back to power again. So the other thing that poverty will expose us to is all the issues that we have been discussing on this panel, because we have also seen this act of like an economic terrorism to us citizens. So we as citizens, we need to rise up to make sure that we are not outnumbered. We need to be organized in our own small spaces, and make sure that the states respect, especially Article 43 of the Constitution, where we just ask the government to implement few in the country is that it's not that we Kenyans we are poor. We are not poor. We have resources as a country, but the problem is how our resources are being managed. And we have seen in every sector, the executive, even in county governments, national government, tampering with other different sectors in terms of managing resources, and also the aspect of accountability, which is very key in terms of even our debt, because we are taking debt, but we don't know what are these debts doing in this country, because we are suffering. People are continuing being poor, and they can't even access to all these basic services that we want. So we need also to audit the public debt and make sure that we know how much was borrowed, what the money do in this country, and also verify, because I've seen we as Kenyans, we have a lot of active citizens, even at your local level. We need to visit even the project that has been done by county government and make sure that all these projects have been implemented. Then there was a question, what's the way forward? The way forward is, we as a country, we need to participate in all political processes to make sure that everyone who is in those seats, in those offices, they are accountable, even your area chief, because we have normalized even corruption at local community level, giving just police officers 1,000. We have normalized those situations where we have seen even today, we have people who are demonstrating because police officers have hiked the price of bribe. So you can see the level of how we have normalized corruption. So we need to start there at community level before even going on top there to Ruto must go. We need to start this conversation at our own community spaces. Asanteni sana.
Thank you so much, Daudi. I think that with that, one of the key take home is that poverty is political. The main reason that we are having budget cuts on education, health, and everything. Sorry, poverty is political, and the main reason that we're having budget cuts on health, education, and other social sectors is because they want us to be slaves. When you do have a population that is not educated, you have a population that is able to follow you, and you're able to give tokens to them. That is what they want. Kindly join me in applauding the panelists. Thank you so much to the amazing panelists. I know that we've taken quite some time, and my apologies that we are the ones who are standing in between you and lunch. Conversation still continues online, and the panelists will still be available over lunch. We can continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
All right, as they sit, we also clap for the moderator of the session. Asanteni sana. It's something that we've postponed for so long, we cannot postpone it any further. That is your lunch and refreshments to also catch up and network with each other. And as the conversation was going on, I was just thinking our responsibility as taxpayers. We live in a country that was able to collect up to 2.4 trillion shillings without much struggle. Out of that, it is supposed to be helping us finance our roads, our education, our health, water, and many other services. But what is happening? In the road sector, as you pay taxes which are to the tune of more than 80% of the landed cost of fuel, you're also required to raise the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings. There's a consideration of toll fees to toll some roads to finance building of roads and maintenance. To provide water despite the taxes, you need to pay WRA charges, every bill of electricity that you pay, and anything that is produced using dams. The taxes are supposed to finance health, but you need to pay for social health insurance, some 2.75% of your salary as soon as cleared by the courts.
to help the government provide universal health coverage. The taxes are supposed to finance education, but to help the government deliver that service, you need to chip in to pay for the university funding model and also give loans to your sons and daughters. The government is supposed to provide a platform for housing, but to help the government, you need to pay a housing levy of 1.5%. Let's continue helping our government. Now that you're hungry, I'm told I should not make you angry. Whatever I've done, I apologize. But we have levies across every sector. Stay awake. Enjoy your lunch. We'll see you in 40 minutes. That is at 3:15. 3:15. And for you to have lunch, you'll need a meal card. So please pick a meal card on your exit. It's provided at the doors. So do that.
Politicians wanabonga mob, that's why kwa parliament kuna speaker ndio jue vitu ziko wrong, pedestrians wanapisha gari kupita kwa zebra crossing. Kama unachuki nami heri ni poison na rat and rat kuliko ninunulie Passat. Funds za elimu free nalipia mtoto wa minister private school fee. Kuwa mtu mzuri ni hatia, walinishuku nikiopa mrembo lift kwa njia. Tafadhali samahani, shukran. Ni tamu zimepotea kata tuko skin ya Msudan. Kisu ni cutlery, kwa mkono ya Roma ni silaha na increase casualties. Ukipenda utamu ya sweetie, kuwa tayari kuvumilia gravity. Wakiwa na warembo, twaza na teremka down to earth. Wanapenda from the belt down, see from the belt up. Flower coffee movie, see free. Kwa kipeni kikuhage, manishi na kulove. After episodes za tighter pants, wanadhani urembo ni kuvaa tighter pants. Wanafunika less, so na address this issue. Mguu split kasa nya piska DVD. Ni maplayer, wanahitaji CDs. Cells, wanaume ni river. Upate bank, lazima get wet. Hiyo ndio advice tunawape. Jahas la fala. Lakini kile naogopa hata zaidi. Unatumia Panadol